What's up, guys? It's Clark. Welcome back to the channel. Everybody's telling you to let go, but no one tells you how. And so in this video, I want to revisit that topic of letting go in your life. We're also going to cover a simplified version of the emotions scale. And then to speed this up, I want to share 3 big blocks that prevent people from actually letting go and the solutions to each one. All right, so if that sounds good, smash the like button. Link down below to our free newsletter I send to you every Saturday with ideas that can change your life. So let's first talk about what's actually going on inside of you when we're talking about letting go and set the goal. Lower emotions you would feel on a given day are fear, guilt, and shame. And there's that famous quote from this book, Paradise Lost, John Milton. The mind is its own place in itself and can make a hell out of heaven or a heaven out of hell. This is psychological hell. And in that way, it's like a ball and chain that does weigh you down. It is emotional baggage. You've heard that term. They have a lot of baggage, dude. That will weigh you down. And this is also why, on the flip side, we like hanging around people who are funny, who are light, who are expressive, that raise us up. We'll get to that in a little bit. All right, the next trio here, these are better than these. You'd prefer these, but they're still, I guess, in the destructive energy if you live your life here, versus the constructive energy, the creative energy, as I call it. Pride, anger, and desire. Okay, so in order for you to want to better your life or to let go, you have to desire something. You have to see it better than it is. But if you're only stuck in fear, guilt, and shame, you can't even have that vision to better your life. And that's the real sinister part about it. Anger. You might be like, why is that higher than fear and guilt and shame? Because when you're angry, you want to do something about it. That can be motivating. There's a lot of anger to prove yourself or prove people wrong. That can be very powerful to tap into to change your life. You notice a lot of the motivational content that's targeted towards beginners is getting them to feel angry, right? It's like a guru screaming at you, like, you got to better your life. You got to want something, as bad as you want to breathe. You got to hustle. You got to grind. You grind yourself down to the smallest piece. And guess what? That's useful to people who need that. If they're here, getting angry is a good way to get yourself out of that. So moving up the scale, getting in a better state, you have emotions of courage, willingness, and acceptance. No, these are better, right? When you have the courage to move beyond anger, the courage to actually think for yourself instead of getting sucked into groupthink tribalism that splits us in duality, paradigms, us versus them, their side, our team, their team. And you can see beyond that when you have the courage to elevate yourself and see the different perspective. Then there's willingness to change, acceptance. These are also the gateway to actually start creating, okay? Because when you're angry or you're in this state, you're just like it's hard to create because you just want to tear everything down. Haters and people on the internet and trolls, it's always from this energy. But when you finally accept things for what they are, a musician who finally accepts their style and uniqueness, and they own it instead of trying to conform and be like someone else, that's when they create their best art. When you finally stop trying to improve yourself and you just accept yourself for who you are and not being flawed or broken, that's when you finally start to come into your own. Now, for the top emotions, we have things like reason, love, joy, and peace. Ultimately, what we're after is the states of inner peace and love. Now let's break down a couple important points related to this before we give you the 3 blocks and ultimately how to fix this. The biggest misconception people have with this chart when they see it is taking this as a goal. They're like, okay, my goal is to stay there and never go back there. If I ever feel any of these, then I'm backsliding in life. That is so unrealistic. And don't buy any movement or guru who's preaching that you're just gonna get here and stay there. The full human experience is to feel everything. Just like all the notes in a scale, all the colors out there, you're human, you're gonna bounce around and feel things. You might have a year where you stay more up here. You might have a month where you stay more up here. You might have a day in a really good month when you're down here. So the whole point of letting go is realizing when you're in some of these emotions, okay, what's causing it? Can you release that? Can you view it differently? And it's in the releasing that you finally can float up and feel good. Nietzsche has a banger quote. He says, the snake that cannot shed its skin must perish. So letting go is less about like adding things in. It's just more about removing and shedding off the layers that aren't you. So now I want to get into the 3 blocks that prevent you from letting go. So I'll give you a personal story on this one. Back in the day, I was super hooked on Juul pods, e-cigs, And I was smoking the equivalent of 2 packs of cigarettes a day of those things. And no one's smoking thinking they're doing something for their health. And so I told myself I should quit. I really got to quit this thing. And I would try, go a couple days, and then fall back. And now there's this whole other can of worms of guilt and shame. Well, I tried and I failed, and now I'm really screwed. Until one day, I did something so backwards that helped so much. This is the biggest one I see people get stuck in. You're not ready. See, when I finally admitted to myself after so many failed attempts of trying to quit vaping, I just wasn't ready because I liked having the comfort and the state change of nicotine. What was so crazy is all the guilt faded away of doing the thing, because so many bad habits are perpetuated by guilt and shame, these low vibe emotions. When you're here, this is where you drink compulsively from. This is where you do drugs. This is where you have tons of bad habits and doom scroll. If you're compulsively hiding out with those habits, it's because it's from here and you feel guilty and shameful, which just perpetuates the bad habits. So once I just admitted to myself the uncomfortable truth, I wasn't ready to stop smoking, a lot of the guilt and shame faded away from it. And what was easier is shortly after that, because I didn't have guilt and shame, a lot of the motivation to do this thing and hide out with it was gone, and I was able to quit. What I realized in that is a lot of our bad behaviors are driven out of shame and guilt. Now let's take a different context in your life here. Relationships. A lot of people are like, well, I can't get over this person. And the simple fact is that they're not ready to. I have some backwards advice, instead of forcing yourself to get over someone, what if you just allowed yourself to not get over them? If nothing else works, try that. Just allow yourself to be attached to them. And eventually what's going to happen is you're going to get so exhausted from that you're going to have no choice but to accept it and say, you know what, screw this. Like I'm ready to go live my life. I don't want to be attached to this person anymore. I'm not even that same person that they dated. So what do you do instead? Well, Carl Jung has his banger quote I reference on this channel quite a bit. Your biggest problems in life can't be solved. They can only be outgrown. And what he means by that, in my interpretation, you're not trying to solve your problems so you can raise this up. You're trying to just outgrow them and move beyond it. And part of that is realizing when you're ready and when you're not. Good on block number 1. Knowing when you're not ready and not judging yourself for not being ready, but allowing yourself to process through it on your own time, and definitely not getting sucked into guilt and shame and judgment, which makes it way worse. Number 2, this is the second block that prevents you from dropping things and moving on. Before I give it to you, you have to understand one concept, and this will take some of the weight off personalizing everything that you feel. Because you have some of these emotions bubble up and it's easy to identify them and be like, oh, I'm a fearful person, or oh, I'm an angry person who got mad at someone cutting me off, when someone cut me off in traffic. If you're not careful and you don't check that, it becomes an identity and makes it worse. The distinction here is the difference between primary emotions and secondary emotions. This comes from EFT therapy. So primary emotions are your first initial reaction. Secondary emotions are the thing after that. You feel sad because someone's not texting you back and you really vibed with that person. Well, that's normal. But the secondary emotion, this is the damage that we do to ourselves, where we tell ourselves the story that we're never going to find anyone again. They were the one that got away. We're unlovable. We don't deserve it, etc. It's normal to feel disappointed. In fact, it's healthy if you lost a job and you find yourself in a state of depression. Dude, I'm freaking out. I don't know what I'm going to do. Like that's all normal. What's not normal is saying, and I'll never find another job and I'm going to have to get on welfare and I'm a total loser and now, my life is in the gutter. Letting go is not about this primary emotion that you feel, because oftentimes this is automatic. It might be there for good reason. And if you try to force something, you're actually falling into the suppression trap. Letting go is about releasing the secondary emotions and the stories that come with it, the meaning you're associating with it. This mistake is you focus on the primary emotion and not the secondary meaning. So if you just stay on the surface of what you're trying to let go of, it's never going to go away. It's just going to bubble back. And this is where suppression comes in. All right. This is you feel fearful and you drink and then you don't feel afraid anymore. Well, then the next time you feel that fear, if you don't drink, you're going to feel it. And you know, my favorite analogy, it's like a trash can. We all have this emotional waste system down here. And if we never take out the trash and we just shove it down to make room for more gunk, it's going to stink up our whole emotional state. So the solution isn't to just ignore it and shove it down deeper, suppression, right? Oh, I feel afraid. Let me just drink, and oh, I don't feel afraid anymore. Oh, I feel lonely. Let me just, pursue superficial relationships, and then I don't feel lonely anymore. That all just shoves it down deeper, and then it comes back with a vengeance. The solution is to help take out your emotional trash. Now, how do you do that? You stop focusing on the primary emotions. You start focusing on the secondary meaning. That's why I'm such a fan of journaling. It's like the place you can go to create new meaning of stories throughout your life. And once you start drilling down to the root of something, it really does change your perspective on it. Feelings about your feelings and the meaning you're making of them. If you feel any of this, go a level deeper and say, what does this mean? Okay, I'm feeling afraid. What does this mean? What's the story I'm telling behind it? And that is the thing you actually need to do some work around and let go of. And if we don't, then we're just going to keep feeling this feeling and wondering why this whole process of letting go and growth isn't working. Until I realized the fear of, oh, that past relationship didn't work out and now I'm afraid my clock is running out, I'm gonna be lonely, or that was the best person for me, they got away, and what that means, that's the thing we need to let go of, not the fear of that person. Does that make sense? When I'm afraid of pivoting because I invested 10 years of my life into this thing and I want it to mean something, and if I walk away, all that time is wasted, or at least that's how I perceive it, then I'm never gonna walk away from it. I'm always gonna be afraid and I'm just gonna be stuck. Instead of doing the inner work and realizing, oh, those 10 years set me up for the next thing, and I get to transfer all that experience into this thing that's going to be better and more aligned with me. That's an example of an insight you can get through doing the inner work or letting go. Oh, that person, we would have never worked out in a million years, and they actually taught me a lot about what I don't want and about who I am, and now the next relationship's going to be more aligned and better. That's an example of how letting go works. Both of those bump you up to here with changing your story, the acceptance and willingness around seeing something different. There's a lot of techniques out there that help you suppress further down, and you think you're making progress with just another technique. The real inner work takes courage to peer down to the depths of your soul and look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what? I can be an asshole. I am capable of treating the person I say I love terribly. There's people smarter than me. I don't know everything, right? That level of humility, and that's the inner work, not to get too personal here, but I've been doing for years. And I think what really opened it up was working one-on-one with a coach for over a year, who every single week was just that. It was just someone tearing a part of you open and just like poking a pencil in there over and over again. You're like, stop. And you see all these defense mechanisms kick on, your ego squirming, and then it finally wears you down and sits with you for months, and you start becoming open to a new way of looking at yourself and then the world. That's what letting go, that's what growth is. And letting go is letting go of a part of your identity. Finally, the last one here, that this one is probably the biggest, and it's a huge misconception. People confuse letting go with quitting. A lot of people can view this process of letting go and releasing as weak. He's a quitter. Especially if you grew up playing sports. I don't know about you, but like I was playing sports, and there's that saying, oh, quitters never win and winners never quit. You got to have grit, perseverance. I want to share a quote with you on this that I think can explain it better than I can concisely. It comes from C.S. Lewis. I've been on a bit of a kick of his recently. We all want progress, but progress means getting nearer to the place where you want to be. And if you have taken a wrong turning, then going forward does not get you any nearer. If you're on the wrong road, progress means doing an about turn and walking back to the right road. And in that case, the man who turns back soonest is the most progressive man. There is nothing progressive about being pig-headed and refusing to admit a mistake. Letting go does not mean quitting. Letting go means realizing when you're on the wrong path, you can let go of that without feeling like a failure. And in doing so, if you're on the wrong path and you turn around quickest, you're actually the most progressive person. I've known people who have tried the whole entrepreneur thing and it just didn't feel right in their soul. And then they go back and get a 9-to-5, and that's right for them. And that maybe they like the idea of entrepreneurship and all the social media content, but the day-to-day of doing it and being alone, they didn't like. And getting a 9-to-5 was them maturing out of this old paradigm, and they were letting go of a story they were telling themselves about having to work and be a certain way. What does your next breakthrough require you stopping? What do you need to let go of so that you can move forward? We're not going back on a version of ourselves. We're stepping in to the version we want to be. All right, guys, we covered a lot today, and I want to recap this with you, and then we'll tell you what to do next here. Your mind makes a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven if you let it. There's emotions that are destructive that will suck you down and keep you in this downward spiral where life starts feeling like hell on earth. But then there's emotions that you can get to that help you create and express yourself, that spiral you up where life gets better. Letting go is the process of releasing stories or people or anything that's sucking you down here. And in doing so, you're able to get into this middle ground where then you can float up. But there are 3 things that block you from that. You're not ready to actually do it. You might like the thing you're holding on to, and until you're ready to fully let go of it, no amount of techniques or forcing it will matter. Block 2 is focusing on the primary emotion instead of the secondary meaning. And if your focus is letting go of any of these only, you'll suppress it down and fall into unhealthy coping mechanisms. The meaning behind these is what you really need to get to, as that's often the root. And the third block is viewing letting go as surrendering and quitting. Being so pig-headed, so to speak, that we think we're progressive for just charging forward, when really being progressive means doing an about turn if we're on the wrong road. And the way you do that is asking yourself, what's that thing I need to drop and let go of that's actually progressive and moving me on a different path? Link down below to our free newsletter from me to you every Saturday. What I'll do now is link up right here a follow-up video for you to watch if you want to keep this going and learn more about yourself. Do hard things, bet on yourself, make your future self proud. Peace.